UFC Fight Night, Dawson vs. Green is this weekend. I'm going to give you a prediction breakdown of all 11 fights on this card, starting with Montana De La Rosa versus JJ Aldrich. I am going to go with Montana De La Rosa in this matchup. I think just looking at the resumes and how they actually fight, Montana De La Rosa has recently lost to Tatiana Suarez by submission, lost to Macy Barber by decision, beat Ariana Lipski by KO, went to a draw with Mayra Bueno Silva, and then lost to Viviana Araujo. But JJ Aldrich is coming off a KO win over Na Liang, which is a pretty good win. The performance looked pretty solid. Na Liang, unranked fighter, so it was like an all-right win. But she lose to Ariana Lipski, who Montana De La Rosa does have a win over about, 2 years ago. So it wasn't as recent as of 6 months ago. But she did lose to Erin Blanchfield as well. Beat Jillian Robertson, then beat Vennessa Demopoulos. Montana De La Rosa as a fighter, I think she's the better fighter. She does have a win over Ariana Lipski, like I said, and I think the losses that she does have and the draws, she's kind of at that ranked level where I don't think JJ Aldrich is. Like, you see a ranked fighter, an Erin Blanchfield fighter, and she gets submitted immediately, but Montana De La Rosa, Viviana Araujo, was in the main event last year against Alexa Grasso, and lost that one by decision about 3 years ago. And then Mayra Bueno Silva just beat Holly Holm. I think she tested positive for whatever, but she did beat Ariana Lipski, who is a lower ranked fighter, which we saw JJ Aldrich kind of struggle with. So I'm going to go with Montana De La Rosa in this one. It is women's MMA at the end of the day, but I think De La Rosa is actually a pretty solid fighter in that division. And minus 110, like evens on this one, I think might be a little bit of a steal. So I'm going to go with Montana De La Rosa. I'm surprised Tapology odds are kind of close here. I think a lot of people are viewing this quite differently. So we'll see what happens. But 53% picked for Aldrich, 47% for De La Rosa. I'm going to take De La Rosa in this matchup. She's still pretty young, 28 years of age. She still has a lot to improve. And I think she does beat JJ Aldrich probably by decision. Up the card, we have Johnny Munoz Jr. versus Aori Qileng. I'm a little undecided on this matchup because, in all honesty, I feel like this one could definitely go either way. Johnny Munoz Jr. in his last matchup against Daniel Santos looks solid. He didn't get finished in that matchup. Like, Manny Oliveira does a really good job at finishing his opponents, and Daniel Santos was not able to do that there. And he's pretty much Charles Oliveira a couple divisions down. So I think that is in itself impressive. Daniel Santos was a very difficult matchup for Johnny Munoz Jr., but Aori Qileng did end up getting finished pretty early on against Ayman Zahabi, and I think that's why a lot of people on Tapology is going to be picking Johnny Munoz Jr. in this one. But Johnny Munoz, I think in my mind, is more of a grappler than anything. I don't think his offensive wrestling, like just getting people to the ground, is great, but I think once he does get people to the ground, I think he does really well there. But on the feet, I guess he is solid, but against a guy like an Aori Qileng, I think he does really well here. I think Aori Qileng does really well on the feet. I don't think the takedowns will be too big of an issue for him. Maybe I'm just completely wrong here. But I think he'll do a decent job defending the takedowns, and I think he's going to be 100% better on the feet. Maybe this is 29-28 decision win for Aori Qileng, but I don't know why. I just don't trust Johnny Munoz Jr. in this matchup. Maybe after this fight, I will start to trust him a little bit more. But as you can see on his record so far in the UFC, he's been relatively inconsistent with the wins here. It's like loss, win, loss, win, loss, win. Lost to Nate Maness, beat Jamie Simmons, lost to Tony Gravely, beat Ludovic Shalinian, and then lost to Daniel Santos. So his record in UFC is kind of all over the place, at least Aori Qileng, Jay Perrin, Cameron Ellis. I feel like they're kind of in a similar spot where lost to Cody Durden, Jeff Molina, Ayman Zahabi. So yeah, I think they're kind of in a similar place. I'm just going to edge it a little bit more to Aori Qileng. I think he's going to be better on the feet, and I don't think he lets this one go to the ground. It definitely could at certain moments, and I do think that is a little bit worrying because Johnny Munoz is very good on the ground. But I am going to have to side with Aori Qileng. I think the damage is going to be a little bit too much on the feet, and I think he wins by a decision 29-28. I think this is a little bit of a scrap. There will be certain points where Johnny Munoz does establish a little bit of control, but I think Aori Qileng does a decent job. Up the card, we have Kanako Murata versus Vennessa Demopoulos. This is another interesting one because Kanako Murata has not fought in 2 years and lost to Verna Jandiroba by a doctor stoppage TKO. It was an injury, so it was definitely a little bit of an interesting matchup there. I believe Verna Jandiroba did have her in a bunch of submissions, and she was able to get out of it, but did end up getting injured there. Beat Randa Marcos by decision on her UFC debut, and then 9 months later fought Verna Jandiroba. But Vennessa Demopoulos is not that good of a fighter. And honestly, she's the kind of fighter where you see a person with a 2-year layoff who looks decent and is at least on her level and think, okay, she has a decent shot at beating her if she at least improved while she's off. And she's 30 years of age. Demopoulos is 35 years of age, so she is definitely getting older. And Murata, 30 years of age, entering her prime, 2 years off. I think she's definitely improving, or at least that's what I'm assuming. She has definitely improved. So I am going to just edge it to Murata. Again, this is a women's MMA matchup, so keep that in mind with this fight. But I think decision probably with Murata in this matchup is probably the way to go. 80% picked by Tapology. Murata is 20% for Demopoulos. We'll see how this one goes. Demopoulos does get some decently weird decisions, and she does find weird ways to win these fights. Like she beat Maria Oliveira, beat Jinju Frey, and beat Silvana Gomez-Suarez, even though some of them were like a little iffy, but lost to Karolina Kowalkiewicz very recently. So I'm going to go with Murata in this one. Up the card, we have Nate Maness versus Mateus Mendonca. I am going to go with Mateus Mendonca. I don't know how to necessarily say his name, but in his last matchup, he did lose to Javid Bashrat, which isn't a bad loss to have. That was about 7 months ago. He did kind of hang in there early on in the fight. He did kind of tough out some of the shots. And Javid Bashrat, the Bashrat brothers in general, have looked really good. And I think Javid's actually a little bit of the better brother. But they're both kind of similar on equal footing, but Javid's just a little bit bigger of a fighter, just size-wise. So I kind of edge it a little bit more to him, but outside of that, I think he's looked a little bit more impressive, but Farid actually looked pretty impressive recently. But anyways, Mendonca does train out of Shootbox Diego Lima, and honestly, when it comes to these lower level fights, I kind of just made a little bit of a decision in my brain that you kind of just have to go with these Shootbox guys who just scrap and have good stand-up and good ground game as well. So I am going to have to go with Mateus Mendonca. I know Nate Maness has lost to Tagir Ulanbekov when he did move down to flyweight. Lost that one by guillotine, and then lost to Umar Nurmagomedov by decision. So he has lost relatively recently to some Dagestani guys, and I know that can be kind of iffy when looking at matchups here, but he did beat Tony Gravely by KO. What was this, about 2 years ago? So recently he's just been getting dominated on the ground. I feel like Mendonca does have the ability to take this one to the ground, does have the ability to keep this one on the feet, does have the power in his hands, does have the submission abilities, 24 years of age, again, out of a very good gym, who at just like a standard, like a very, like a entry-level standard, are very skilled fighters. So I am going to have to go with Mateus Mendonca. I think if there's someone that's going to be improving as they get a little bit older and as 7 months off, I think it's definitely going to be Mendonca in this one rather than a 9 month off for Nate Maness, who's 32 years of age in his prime. So I am going to go with Mateus Mendonca here. Tapology's picking Mendonca in this one, 79% picked by Tapology, 25% by decision, 9% by submission, and 59% by TKO KO. I don't mind a finish here for Mendonca. Maybe, I don't think he gets the submission. Yeah, maybe he does just end up catching Nate Maness at this point in his career and just finishes him off on the ground there. So I'm going to go with Mateus Mendonca, probably second or third round TKO. I don't mind this one going to a decision either, and it just being a little bit of a scrap, but I am going to go with Mendonca in this one. Up the card, we have Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Diana Belbita. I can't say her name for some reason, but I'm going to go with Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I know she is 37 years of age, almost 38, and I know Diana Belbita is relatively young, and she is coming off going against Maria Oliveira, but she did not look that impressive in that fight. I mean, she has decent skill, but it's nothing crazy. She was literally just keeping her head down the whole entire time. I don't know if her coaches told her to like tuck her chin, and she was like just staring at the ground, like punching like this. I don't know what exactly was going on, but it was very weird. She's definitely a lower level women's MMA fighter, and I think Karolina Kowalkiewicz relatively recently beating some of those lower level women's MMA fighters in Felice Herrig, Silvana Gomez-Suarez, and Vennessa Demopoulos, especially recently. So I am going to go with Karolina Kowalkiewicz, even though she is an older fighter. I think almost well over 10 years older than Diana Belbita. I think she does get this one done, probably by decision. 84% picked by Tapology, 16% picked for Belbita in this one. I think it does go to a decision. I am going to go with Karolina Kowalkiewicz, though. I think she does beat her up for like a 30-27 decision in this one. So let's move on. Up the card, we have Philipe Lins versus Ion Cutelaba. This is another fight I've been kind of 50-50 on because Philipe Lins especially recently, has been on a 3-fight win streak, beat Maxim Grishin by decision, beat OSP by TKO, then beat Marcin Prachnio by decision. Ion Cutelaba, last fight, beat Tanner Boser. Kind of was like a little bit of a breath of fresh air after he was going on a 3-fight losing streak. It did kind of seem like if he did lose against Tanner Boser, when Boser was coming down from heavyweight, it did seem like he might have been like getting on the cut list or whatever, but the UFC really does like Ion Cutelaba, so not surprised that they would have kept him around. But he did lose to Ryan Spann, Johnny Walker, and Kennedy Nzechukwu. So these are definitely top level light heavyweights, especially Nzechukwu is probably one of the top level unranked light heavyweights there, just ranking wise, and he does beat some pretty decent fighters as well. But Johnny Walker, I think I want to say is top 5 now. I may be wrong there, but I think Ion Cutelaba had a little bit of success early there. Same thing kind of with Spann, had a little bit of success early. That's the kind of thing with Ion Cutelaba, is that in the first round, he does really, really well. It's super explosive, good wrestling in general, good power in his hands, but it just seems like right after that, the fight IQ is just a little bit lacking, and it doesn't seem like he can kind of keep up the pace that he does set, and that's kind of worrying with a guy in Philipe Lins, who, although did lose to Tanner Boser by TKO KO, before fighting Marcin Prachnio, winning that one by decision, and beating OSP, and then beating Maxim Grishin. Philipe Lins is decently durable at light heavyweights. Like, you've seen him beat these lower level light heavyweight fighters, and it's kind of interesting to see what will happen if he does move up there, because you are seeing Ion Cutelaba, who has been in the UFC for a little bit. He did beat Devin Clark, I think, who's actually doing decent at this point, and then went on the losing streak, and then beat Tanner Boser, and he looked decently impressive in that last fight. So I am going to go with Ion Cutelaba just with the finishing ability over Philipe Lins. Philipe Lins did lose in the first round against Tanner Boser. I know it was at heavyweight, but that is still kind of worrying. It was 3 years ago, and Philipe Lins is 38 years of age, and Ion Cutelaba is 29. And that's another thing in this fight, is that Ion Cutelaba could be still improving, I guess. Maybe he'll be a little bit more, I won't say he won't be patient, but I think Philipe Lins is definitely decently hittable in this matchup, and I think Ion Cutelaba can catch him and finish him there. I don't mind Philipe Lins winning this one. Plus 125 is not a bad underdog for this matchup, but I think Ion Cutelaba catches him. I think he does really well, and I think he, again, catches them, finishes them up on the ground by TKO. 65% of Tapology is picking Cutelaba by 82% by TKO KO, 35% for Lins, 53% by TKO KO. And I do think if this one goes out of the first round and Cutelaba has a really good first round, I would not mind a live bet for Philipe Lins, because I feel like the second round, you'll see a little bit of a drop-off from Ion Cutelaba. I'll be getting worried if Ion Cutelaba does not finish Philipe Lins in that first round, and it does end up going to the second round, because I think Philipe Lins definitely has the ability to finish Ion Cutelaba in that second. So the card, we have Bill Algeo versus Alexander Hernandez. I am going to go with Bill Algeo. I think he's super underrated. His last fight was pretty impressive against TJ Brown. TJ Brown did have some moments in there, but he, again, I think it was like a lead elbow or something like that. Like, he just finds ways to finish these guys, put on some decent performances. Lost to Ricardo Ramos, beat Joe Anderson Brito, which is actually a really good win to have. He won that one by decision less than 2 years ago. Beat Herbert Burns. I mean, that was an iffy win. Lost to Andre Fili in a pretty close matchup. It was extremely close. I think it came down to like the last round or whatever in a back take where Bill Algeo was just beating the crap out of Andre Fili, but he had his back. So it was a little bit of a discussion on who should have won that one. But based on the rules, I guess you should give it to Fili because it was a dominant position. But it was a pretty interesting fight there, but did look pretty impressive against a decently skilled fighter in Andre Fili. So looked pretty good there, and then got to finish over TJ Brown, who's very solid himself. But Alexander Hernandez is coming off a good win against Jim Miller at lightweight, but now he's back down to featherweight, and he's had a lot of problems with the cardio, and that kind of worries me in this matchup. I am going to go with Bill Algeo because I think he can make this one a scrap, get Alex Hernandez doing a lot of output and making a lot of mistakes, and then kind of just gassing out after that second round where you'll see in a lot of his fights, especially with the Billy Quarantillo fight. He lost by standing TKO, had really good success early on there, but couldn't keep up the pace. Same Hinata Moicano, lost that one by submission. It's just the same kind of thing with Alexander Hernandez, even though he did fight a more patient pace style at lightweight, which does kind of worry me for this one, because Hernandez does have a lot of power, and he did look really good against Jim Miller, and Jim Miller has been looking good as well. So it is a little bit worrying here, but I think Bill Algeo just has that unique ability of getting finishes. I know he has gone to decisions relatively recently, but he does have a very unorthodox way of fighting. And I think Alexander Hernandez moving down to featherweight, I can just see him gassing out and Bill Algeo just finishing him, probably by TKO or submission. I don't mind it either way. I think he was just at like some Fury grappling event that I did watch. Yeah, straight ankle lock. I don't even think you're able to do that in Fury. I believe that was a big thing on commentary or whatever, because you're not supposed to put him in any leg locks. But Algeo is 72% picked by Tapology here, 65% by decision, 16% by submission, and 14% by TKO KO, 28% for Hernandez, 63% by decision, 25% by TKO KO. I don't mind Hernandez. Maybe if he comes out there a little bit more patient like he did in his last fight. Good again. I think featherweight is just going to be such a big problem for Alexander Hernandez in managing his cardio in this one. So I'm going to go Bill Algeo by second round finish. I'm going to say TKO KO. I don't mind his submission either after Hernandez gasses out a little bit more here. Up the card, we Drew Dober versus Ricky Glenn. I am going to go with Drew Dober. Ricky Glenn did not look that great in his last fight against Christos Giagos. That was 4 months ago and lost that one by KO. 34 years of age. They're both 34. Actually, Drew Dober is a little bit older. And I know Drew Dober did lose to Matt Frivola 4 months ago as well by KO. And that was like the first time we've seen Drew Dober lose by KO. I believe that was the first time ever in his career. Oh, no, he's lost twice by KO, TKO. I think the last time he lost by TKO was how long ago? I don't know why I'm actually looking for this. I don't think it's important, but I'm going to try and look for it anyways. But Matt Frivola just beat him by TKO KO. Probably, yeah, it was a good decision to stop the fight. Drew Dober didn't want it to get stopped, and we know how good of a chin Drew Dober does have. And I think he can not hang in there, but I think he can beat up Ricky Glenn pretty badly here. I think he does end up getting the finish in the first or second round in this fight. I think Tapology agrees quite a bit, 97 to 3% for Dober in this matchup, 84% by TKO KO, 9% by decision. I think he knocks out Ricky Glenn. Ricky Glenn is just getting physically, he's getting a little bit too old here. Drew Dober just got his chin kind of cracked a little bit more. I don't think he's going to be a chinny guy now, even though he is getting older. I don't think he's going to be a chinny guy, and I do think he just finishes Ricky Glenn on the feet. So I'm going to go not Ricky Glenn. I'm going to go with Drew Dober in this matchup by finish. Up the card, we have Alex Morono versus Joaquin Buckley. And again, this is another and very interesting matchup. Like this whole entire card, there's nothing that really flashes, but it's a lot of solid fighters with solid name value just sprinkled out throughout this card. So that's why it's going to be super fun, especially. So I'm really looking forward to this card because of that reason. But Alex Morono versus Joaquin Buckley, again, a very interesting one. Alex Morono, I think, is a very solid fighter. I won't call him durable because he did get finished against Santiago Ponzinibbio. I know it was on short notice. I think it was like a catchweight fight as well, and he did look really good, especially early on. I think he was on his way to win that, and ended up getting caught in like the third round or something like that and finished off there. So it was very unfortunate for him in that matchup because I think he did drop Ponzinibbio like once or twice. Is coming off a win against Tim Means where he looked decent there. But the thing with Alex Morono, even though he is a very solid fighter, I think he is very defensively unaware. He does do this thing where he kind of just sprinkles on the outside a little bit more, where it might be a little bit difficult for Joaquin Buckley to kind of hit him there. But defensively, Alex Morono does not have good defense at all. Like the way he defends, it's like super weird. And I think he's very open for shots that Joaquin Buckley can definitely land on him. And I think Joaquin Buckley has shown that ability to get finishes over a guy. Like Albert Duraev has looked decent recently, although it was a doctor stoppage. He did look really good in that fight. Abdul Razak Alhassan, split decision win there. That was at middleweight. Lost to Nasruddin Mavov, lost to Chris Curtis by TKO KO. Even though Chris Curtis is a guy that maybe you'll think like is a solid boxer in general, kind of like Morono, Chris Curtis has a lot better boxing, has a lot more power in his hands as well, which is a little bit of a difference maker here. When Morono tries to get that power going, he swings super wide and is super open, which is why I think Joaquin Buckley, who is a finisher, he's a guy that will go out there and be a very unorthodox fighter, has the innate ability of finishing guys, kind of like Santiago Ponzinibbio. I think he can do the same thing to Morono. If this doesn't go to a decision, I can see him finishing Alex Morono in like the second or third round. I don't see it being a first round finish, but Joaquin Buckley, very weird fighter. I can see him like maybe landing a kick and Morono just kind of going off balance a little bit more, and then Buckley just catching him and finishing him by TKO in this matchup. So I am going to go Joaquin Buckley, 70% picked by Tapology, 81% by TKO KO, 12% by decision. If this line does move, it is going to be very interesting because Morono plus 165, is a little bit interesting here. I think it should be a little bit more even, but a lot of people are going with Buckley here. He did have a win over Andre Fialho, so how great of a win is that at this point? A finish win over Andre Fialho at welterweight. How big a win is that? I have no idea, but I think 4-inch reach advantage will definitely serve Joaquin Buckley pretty well in this matchup. So I am going to go with him by second or third round, TKO KO. Up the card, we have Joe Pyfer versus Abdul Razak Alhassan. I am going to go Joe Pyfer here. I think he can lean on his grappling. I think he can lean on his stand-up a little bit more here. Abdul Razak Alhassan is a very good stand-up fighter and does have some decent groundwork, but I think Joe Pyfer, very good on the ground. I think he just beat GM3 in MMA and then beat him in grappling as well. So he has looked very impressive on the ground. He did kind of have that weird Dustin Stoltzfus Contender Series fight where he like dislocated his arm or whatever, his elbow, which is pretty rough to see. But came back, beat Ozzy Diaz, beat Alan Amadowski, which Amadowski's kind of a layup. But GM3, even though he's kind of an iffy fighter, is still a decent win to have, especially in grappling, in Fury Pro Grappling. Won that one by decision, did beat GM3 in grappling. So I think that is pretty impressive in general there. But Joe Pyfer has the power. Durability, I kind of want to see here. Maybe if he does get hit with some shots against Alhassan. But I think Joe Pyfer can catch Alhassan in this one. I think this one ends in the first round no matter what. I think it'll definitely be pretty interesting. Plus 300 for Alhassan is interesting as well. Maybe it should be a little bit closer, but Joe Pyfer, I think, definitely wins this one for sure in the first round by TKO KO. 92% picked for Pyfer, 82% by KO. Again, I think this one does finish in the first round no matter what. Even if Alhassan wins, I think it will likely be in the first round. So it should be a pretty fun fight, pretty fun co-main event for this matchup. Looks like the UFC is starting to promote a little bit, not starting, but is continuing to promote Joe Pyfer a little bit in his career. So up the card, we have Grant Dawson versus Bobby Green in our main event of this fight night card. I am going to go with Grant Dawson. I think he has looked really, really good. He actually is improving quite a bit over his last few fights. Like, you'll definitely see him start to grow quite a bit in some of these fights as well. And his last fight against Demir Ismagulov kind of just showcased that quite a bit 3 months ago as well. Just completely just dominated Demir Ismagulov. I was not expecting it. I think I might have even chosen Demir Ismagulov. I don't even remember who I picked in that matchup, even though it was 3 months ago. I think I probably did pick Demir Ismagulov, but Grant Dawson looks super impressive there. Did what Arman Tsarukyan could not really do. I know Arman Tsarukyan did have a semi-dominant performance, but Demir Ismagulov was still getting up. Arman couldn't really establish too much of control over him, but Grant Dawson showed that he had the better grappling than an Arman Tsarukyan. It's kind of interesting because you had Islam Makhachev, who made it pretty interesting with a young Arman Tsarukyan. Islam definitely won that one, pretty clearly won that fight, but the fact that the ways that Arman did defend some of those takedowns from Islam Makhachev was decently impressive. And Bobby Green, as we know, pretty much got destroyed by Islam Makhachev. I know it was a short notice fight, but again, he did get taken down pretty early and just TKO'd. And even though I do think that fight was stopped a little bit early, I think probably could have given him a little bit of a chance there. It didn't seem like the shots were enough to warrant a finish there, but Makhachev did end up getting the TKO finish by just basically controlling him and landing those strikes. But just using a little bit MMA math, Makhachev destroyed Bobby Green. Makhachev made it it wasn't close, but made it interesting with Arman Tsarukyan, a very young Arman Tsarukyan, where a lot of people pinpointed that fight and was like, okay, people are seeing Islam as a top fighter. We got to pay attention to Arman Tsarukyan as well. Arman Tsarukyan within the last year, I don't think it has been a year since he last fought Demir Ismagulov, had a good performance, but again, showed better control than what he normally did have, but not the same control that Grant Dawson did. And Grant Dawson showed better wrestling, better grappling, and I think he can do the same thing against Bobby Green. Bobby Green does have very underrated grappling. I know he just submitted Tony Ferguson, put him out cold, but I think Grant Dawson is just going to be too much there. I think the wrestling is going to be too good. I can see Grant Dawson kind of just hanging there on the feet in the first round, maybe get a little bit of a feeler, and then towards the end of the round, shoot a takedown, just to see what he's got against a relatively high-level boxer in Bobby Green, who's a very weird fighter in general on the feet. Made it close with Rafael Fiziev. Where's this fight at? It was a decently long time ago, within the last couple of years, against Rafael Fiziev on the feet. So I think Grant Dawson wants to see what that looks like, especially early on, find some openings for some takedowns. I think in the second or third round, you'll definitely see Grant Dawson be looking for a finish. I can see him getting a submission over Bobby Green. Grant Dawson has kind of been a more interesting fighter. I know he didn't get the finish against Demir's Magulov, but how well of grappling is Bobby Green going to have, especially at 37 years of age? I know he just submitted Tony Ferguson, who has decent grappling himself, even though he is pretty old himself as well. I am going to go Grant Dawson by finish, I want to say. I think he does get the submission in the second or third round. Maybe Bobby Green defends it a little bit better in the second, but I think in the third round, an older Bobby Green who's getting worked quite a bit is going to tire out a little bit more, even though he does have some pretty good cardio. I think he's going to get tired out a little bit more. I think the pace that Grant Dawson will set will be a little bit too rough for him, and I think he does end up getting the submission. Grant Dawson, again, very good on the ground, very good grappling, has shown better grappling than Arman Tsarukyan, because he did have a better performance against Demir's Magulov than Arman Tsarukyan did. So I'm going to have to take him here. 92% picked by Tapology, 61% by submission, 24% by decision. I am going to go Grant Dawson by submission in the second or third round. Let me know what you guys think about this main event down below in the comments below. Who do you guys have? Grant Dawson versus Bobby Green. And then what fights are you looking forward to on this card? So let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys